Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our pavilion here from the Global Futures Laboratory at Arizona State University. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today at COP28, which is one of the front lines of the environmental discourse that is so necessary in this phase of the development of humankind. We are actually at a critical juncture in history where we have placed so much pressure on our planet and life supporting systems of the planet that we are in a planetary crisis, and the choices we make today will shape the world of tomorrow. And when we say today, we often said that. We said that 50 years ago, we said that along the way. And we always thought, yeah, well, today, tomorrow, we still have time. We actually have reached a point where we don't have that time anymore. Looking at climate, which is, of course, the major topic of COP28, we have to see that the battle against climate change is not only a question of policy, but it's a challenge to our collective creativity, innovation, and importantly, determination. The path ahead of us demands not only courage, but audacity. We need to think differently. We have to redefine what we mean by innovation, and we have to forge new synergies between creativity and translate new scientific knowledge into action on a much faster timescale than we used to. This is a journey of transformation towards a future where sustainability is not an afterthought, but a fundamental requirement for the survival of the human species. And while people often think that this is a dramatic statement, we actually have reached a state where humankind has the capacity for self extinction. And we cannot leave that completely out of our discussion. And then, of course, coming to the topic of the session, the skills for the future. The question is, what skills do we need to accomplish these transformative actions? We are privileged to have with us a panel that represents a rich set of perspectives from academia, conservation, clean technology, and of course, most importantly, the voice of the next generation. Our panelists are not just leaders in their fields, they are visionaries charting the course towards a sustainable future. So let me introduce the panelists, and I will be pretty short. The moderator or the panelists themselves can add to what I say, but if I would read the full bios that I have, I would probably take half the session here because all of them are so accomplished that you actually could have a little book about them. So the moderator of the panel will be Adele Trombetta here to my left, who is a senior vice president and general manager custom experience for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa at Cisco. In her role as Senior Vice President and General Manager of Custom Experience for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, Adele leads over 6,000 employees, 120,000 customers, and 41,000 partners. Strong proponent of sustainability and a steadfast advocate for women in technology, Adele also serves as the Global Customer Experience Lead for Sustainability, as well as being the Global Customer Experience Sponsor for Diversity. Next to Adele, we have Alex Dehgan, good friend of GFL. Alex is the CEO and co-founder of Conservation X Labs. He is the CEO. Conservation X Lab actually is an innovation and technology startup. I think it's more than a startup at that point, focused on conservation. Alex is also one of our own. He's a professor of practice of sustainability and a Global Futures Fellow at Arizona State University. He previously served as chief scientist in the US Agency for International Development, USAID, with the rank of assistant administrator. He founded and led the Office of Science and Technology and created the vision for and helped raise the agency's Global Development Lab. And some of you might actually know the book Snow Leopard. If you don't know, then highly recommend it to read that. Next to Alex is Garry Jacobs. Garry is the president of the World Academy of Art and Science. is also chairman and CEO of the World University Consortium, a think tank promoting a transdisciplinary paradigm in higher education. Additionally, Garry serves as editor of Patmos Journal. He's president of the Mother Service Society, chairman of the Global Institute of Integral Management Studies in India, and a full member of the Club of Rome. Next to Garry, we have Danielle Komamura. She's a youth analyst at the Institute for Climate and Peace. Danielle is also a member of the Youth Climate and Health Network, an ambassador for the Institute for Economics and Peace, and an actively engaged Yango constituency member in the Food and Agriculture, Conflict of Interest, Oceans Voice, and Climate, Peace and Security working groups. Quite a broad range of topics to engage in. And last but not least, next to Danielle, we have Mike Swords, who is the Vice President of Government and International Relations for the Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator. In this role, he is responsible for managing the organization's relationships and with policymakers at the local, regional, and state and federal level. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Adele to lead us through this panel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter, for the amazing introduction. And really, I was looking forward to this panel because when I saw the panels, I say, oh, wow, I'm definitely, we always start saying, oh, I'm very honored to be part of that. This is the case today. And I think that this will be quite an interesting panel because we can really discuss about, or that would be my expectation, not only the technical and hard skills that are important for the future, and will be even interesting to see if we should talk about the skills of the future or skills for the futures. This is one of the topics that we could even talk about. So important the hard skills, the technical skills, but even important the soft skills. We were talking in preparation of this panel how much these soft ones, the collaboration, is key and crucial, especially when it comes to the our future and our sustainable and inclusive future for all. I think that one important premise that we need to do before we start with the question is each of us needs to understand that we are not only observers when it comes to the future. Each of us has a role to play. So we should not expect the government institution or the industry or the academia or the youth to do something. Each of us has a role to play. And with that, we, as you rightly said, Peter, we should have the determinations. It's not a matter only of, yes, let's do that. We need to be determined in doing and changing the future. So with that, me too, without any further ado, let's start with the first question. And I think that is right to start with you, Danielle, and start talking about the skills again. If you believe, Danielle, that there is even any what we call hidden gem, any specific skills that could really make the difference in the future, and if yes, what would that be? You can go.
For me, being at COP28 and in the context of addressing global challenges, in particular, the very intricate and multifaceted issue of climate change, a hidden gem skill that I find crucial is systems thinking, which is something
Hmm.
I was taught at ASU. System thinking involves understanding the interconnectedness of various factors, from social to environmental, and enabling a more holistic approach to problem solving. It's a game changer for me because it encourages comprehensive solutions rather than isolated fixes. And the values of systems thinking lies in its ability to reveal the hidden connections and unintended consequences.
Thank you very much. And we were just discussing, Gary, about the importance of not having silos when it comes to not only to the sustainability, but in general in the education. That is a bit of our heritage. And talking about that, you are the president of the World Academy of Art and Sciences. And we were discussing about the importance of the integration of the two worlds. So what's your perspective when it comes to the skills of the future, thinking of the combination of the how we can complement art and science and influence the skills of the futures?
If we go back to what Peter said in his introduction, it puts a context for us which makes it clear, I think. We're at an unprecedented moment in human history where, after thousands of years of evolution, we are threatening to outgrow planet and undermine the planet that we have been born on. And clearly, that means that it's not the planet that's going to change or has to change, it's we who have to change. And the best, the most powerful system we have for affecting change, evolution of society, is really our educational system. Uh, and the problems we have today are a product of an educational system developed over hundreds of years where we looked at reality in terms of separate compartments. And it's hard for us to believe today that we had an economic science for 2 centuries that ignored the environment. But that was true. And it's not just true of economics, it's true that we had divided reality into so many different pieces. That's not my responsibility.
Hmm.
Uh, and recently we had a meeting with IEEE, with the leaders in artificial intelligence, and we asked them, I'm talking about 5 years ago, before COVID. Today, I hope it would be different.
Yes.
And we asked them, how much are your engineers learning about the impact of technology on society and about how society works and oh, that's not part of the education. 5 years ago, it was a meeting in Italy, in fact.
I'm
Uh,
not proud of that.
it was an international meeting. I'm not,
Not to know.
but I think it shows something was missing.
Yes.
Our academy was founded in 1960 by very eminent intellectuals like Einstein, Bertrand Russell, and Robert Oppenheimer, who was the father of the Manhattan
Hmm.
Project and the atomic bomb. And very soon after they developed this, thinking they were doing the science for the cause of humanity, they were faced with the dilemma. They may have unleashed opened a Pandora's box that could destroy humanity. And they realized nothing in their education, nothing in their training had prepared them for the social consequences and policy implications of what they had developed. And that was why the academy is founded. Fast forward today, we've got AI.
Mm.
And at least it's a little more encouraging today, though it's frightening, that it's the leaders of AI, it's the leaders of technology development who are speaking out and warning the world and governments that we have to do something about it. Well, I think that's the issue with climate change. Uh, Today, who's responsible for climate change? I would turn it around and say, is there any discipline, any educational discipline that should not be concerned with climate change and should not be educating us and looking at, from their point of view, whether it's economics or business or technology or the arts, the communication fields and all? I think we have to accept the fact that we have to educate people to live in this complex world and be global citizens. It means they need a lot more knowledge than the specialized knowledge that comes from disciplinary perspectives. And I'll just end with that. One of our founders was Buckminster Fuller. And some 40 years ago, he said that the disciplinary silos are the source of all the problems
Yes.
that face humanity. And therefore, without fundamental change in the way we think and the way we educate and the way we raise the next generation, we're not going to be able to solve these problems.
Probably, as you are saying, really the sustainability should be the common aspect underpin each and every of our education, of our curriculum, because it's our future, it's our planet. If we do not take care, and here we have a fantastic image of our marble glass, blue glass, that is the planet Earth. If we do not take care, each of us, it's gonna to be really gonna to be. With that, I move to you, Alex, and I would like to cover two topics with you because first is about, as we were saying, the importance of the mix the soft skills and the technical skills. You are quite advanced on both, so I would really like to understand more. What's your view when it comes how the combination of the two can help the collaboration? It is the second aspect of my questions because I even believe that the again sustainability is such a way vast topic. There's no one that can really handle that, tackle that alone. So if we do not come together and collaborate, we are set for failure. So what's your perspective here?
I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't agree more than what you just said, right? On systems thinking,
Yeah.
on multidisciplinarity, on thinking of how we deal with change. All these things I think are critically important. If I'm thinking about the merger of technology and sustainability, and that's what we do at Conservation X Labs. And what I think there's a couple of different things we got to think about. One is I think innovation and disruption, sustainability is actually highly disruptive. And we don't think of it that way, right? We think of it as a way of slowing down economies, a drag on what we're doing. I think sustainability is actually one of the biggest disruptive forces we can have. And there was a famous quote that was given a couple of years ago that the first trillionaire will be a person who's coming up with climate change solutions,
Okay.
right? You think of SpaceX, right, which reuses its rockets and is an order of magnitude cheaper than United Space Alliance, which is its competitors, right? It is cheaper because it's figured out how to do reuse and build a circular economy. And if we think about circularity, that is efficiency. If we think about efficiency, that is a way that you have a competitive edge. And I think, thinking about innovation across what people are going to be doing is disruptive for companies, is disruptive for the future of people's careers. It's core to what the Global Futures Lab does. The other piece on on systems approaches and multidisciplinarity, I always love it because the future is knowing our thinking about we shouldn't ask students what is their major, but ask them what is their problem, right? And that arc of their education should be around that problem focus. And it's one of the things that I think is really powerful. I think just the second piece is recognizing that um, I think that there is a desire for understanding technology specifically in a really specific way, which is monitoring, reporting, and verification of actions both on biodiversity and climate change. And those new technologies that are emerging are leading to things like involuntary transparency, things that Climate Trace has been doing, which means that the entire supply chains are now open. The actions of corporations are now open. And there is a lot more pressure than there's ever been before on these systems. So I think it behooves people to have knowledge of innovation. Companies now I think are combining their chief sustainability officer and their chief innovation officer in single positions. Hannah Lee at Stanford, who is one of the biggest disruptors in the field of like sustainable fabrics, held both those positions at Nike. And Nike produce the factories that make Nike footwear produce 50% of the shoes for the world. And by changing those factories, she actually started to change the planet. I think the other piece, the other two thoughts are fundamentally, it's now about behavior change. We've seen a test run for climate change, which was called COVID, and we failed it. And quite frankly, right? And we need to understand how behavior change, communications, those pieces are going to be part of those skills. And finally, I actually think some of the most disruptive companies that we have aren't just going to be behemoths that grow bigger. They're going to be networked and they're going to harness collective genius. They're going to recognize a couple of things, right? One is no matter who you work for, the smartest people are always working for someone else. And talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. So thinking about measures like open innovation that and networked approaches that allow you to work in concert with others across many other places around the world, is the way that we're going to be able to address these challenges.
That's very interesting. And I'm just wondering if it's only for sustainability or this should be the new way of working in this global village, because we are all part of the, as you were saying, we are part of a global village. We are global citizens. That means it's yes for sustainability, but maybe it's even a broader topic. Huh?
I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that. But I just think if a company today isn't thinking about sustainability, not as ESG, but as core to their practice
Oh,
and
totally,
their competitiveness, they will not have a future 10 years from now.
totally, totally. Good. So now moving to Mike. Mike, you even are working for a quite interesting company that is all about the clean technology. So again, future. Do you believe that there are specific skills that can further foster the innovation when it comes to clean technology?
Sure. First, I want to thank the Global Futures Lab for inviting Lacey to participate in this today. Yes, I do think that there are skills that are probably going to be more important than others. Um, I have the privilege of working with dozens of young entrepreneurs every day, and uh, not all of them have the same skill set. Some of them are incredible communicators and leaders, maybe don't have the same technical skills as some of their peers, and some are incredibly technically and technologically proficient and creative, but perhaps don't have the same managerial or communication skills. So I don't think that there is a certain set of skills. What I have found from working with these entrepreneurs, who all of whom, like you said, are focused on sustainability. We only work with climate tech companies. Um, the one thing that they all have is they're mission driven. They are very outcome oriented, and they really believe in building a better future. So there's no debate about that amongst any of the entrepreneurs that we work with. What I have found is that those that tend to be the most successful are those that are willing to pivot and that aren't set in going in one path in terms of developing a new technology or product or service. When they reach a certain point and they recognize that perhaps their original plan um, wasn't the best one, the best of the entrepreneurs recognize that it's time to pivot and time to make changes and go in a different direction, even if it's just a slight direction. Sometimes it's a very dramatic direction. So I have found that the entrepreneurs that tend to succeed have that in common. But I would say that communication skills are hugely important. Being able to communicate what your technology is and what problems it can solve, and being able to talk to investors, being able to talk to potential customers, is hugely important. One other underrated skill that I think I have seen, some of our more successful entrepreneurs address is to understand the context in which their technology is going to be deployed, to understand the policy forces that are, sending the market signals for the development of markets, particularly in California where we're located. Being able to understand the impact that a renewable portfolio standard or an energy storage mandate or energy efficiency standards or zero emission vehicle mandates, being able to look at those signals that are being sent by the state government and sometimes federal cases, and being able to respond and prepare for that, I think is hugely important.
Interesting. You were mentioning the communication as one of the key skills. I was just wondering how much of the communication is even an enabler for the collaboration. Because if you're able to communicate rightly, well, that should even facilitate the collaboration among all the ecosystem that has to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, being able to collaborate, particularly in the kind of community that we've created of innovators, is hugely important. I mean, some of the companies that I've had the privilege of working with over the last 10 years have been formed by innovators getting together just over coffee in our or lunch on our campus and recognizing that there was value in collaborating with one another, sometimes from very different types of technological pursuits. So I think being able to collaborate and being able to innovate in an environment with other innovators, as opposed to seeing everyone as either a potential competitor or as someone, I think recognizing those opportunities for collaboration is hugely important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, changing a bit topic, I would like to talk about the educational institutions. As such, be ready, Daniel and Gary. I'm coming to you. First, you, Daniel. How do you think that the educational institutions can better prepare the students with skills that are needed for the climate change and for the sustainable future? Can they do anything different?
On the topic of these global challenges that we're dealing with at COP, I think because it's such a inherently multifaceted issue, it requires just as much a multifaceted understanding of these issues. And I believe that by breaking down the traditional subject barriers at educational institutions, um, they can encourage students to integrate knowledge from various disciplines and foster a more comprehensive approach to problem solving. And within that realm of tackling global issues, it also requires a diverse understanding of perspectives and ethical considerations. And I believe that educational programs have to start integrating teachings on cultural competence and ethical decision making and social responsibility. And this can prepare students to navigate the complexities of working on global challenges in a culturally sensitive manner. And as we sit in these pavilions at my first ever COP, this experience so far has taught me that given the rapidly evolving nature of today's global challenges, educational institutions should instill a culture of continuous learning. And this involves fostering curiosity, adaptability, and a willingness to move beyond monodisciplinary education throughout one's professional life, which is something that I feel I'm still encouraging myself to do here.
Great. By the way, that's a perfect segue for the question for you, Gary, because I was about to ask you, how can we, I mean, again, the educational institution, the academy, how can inspire the next generation to combine the creativity, the technical knowledge in order really to, and even the critical thinking, that's an important aspect because we really need, to your point, we need to continuously question what we are doing and challenge ourselves to do something different, having in mind what is the big goal that is our sustainable future.
It's a great question, Adele. Uh, I think the first thing we need is a fundamental change in asking ourselves, what is the purpose of education and what are we trying to educate? And what we're calling for is a shift from subject-centered education to a person-centered education. We need to be educating individual people to live in the future society. And it's not just that everybody should do their technical job or their professional job well. We have to be we have to be members of society. We have to be members of
Yes.
on the planet. And our education is training us for specialized work at a time when we need to be trained to live and live in a sustainable way and live in a harmonious way and understand other people and other cultures. And that's quite a reversal of direction to where we have been going in recent decades, more and more specialized, more and more technical, as if the technology alone is going to solve all our problems. But it's the attitudes, it's the knowledge, it's the values. And, you know, our science developed as a reaction to the religious values of 500 years ago, and we wanted to pride ourselves on our objectivity. but the values of the individual are absolutely going to determine the future of the world. And that's what I was illustrating with the founding of the academy. The scientists realize it doesn't matter how good we are at nuclear fission. It matters how good we are at valuing humanity and the survival of the planet, and not just our career advancement, but our contribution to humanity. That's one. The second one I'd say is really important is we need an education that's really life-centered. And I don't mean that it includes life. I mean it's centered in life. And part of the problem we have with specialization is that it assumes that life is organized in compartments, airtight compartments. But all of us know in life, you cannot you cannot divide uh, any part of the life from the other. Recently, I was addressing a European conference of public health workers and what they can be doing. And I said, I want to talk about climate and health. And I cited the data from the World Health Organization that climate is the single greatest danger to the health of people on the planet. And they all shook their head and said, yeah, the climate scientists should do something about this. And at the end of my talk, I said, I think it's the health workers who should do something about this. You cannot uh, you cannot solve a problem unless we prevent it. And all the data shows that the public health workers, the medical profession, is the most trusted profession in the world, universally. And it's also the one that's got the closest relationship with the public. Uh, our climate scientists, who are so important in the world, but they're looking at the stars or they're measuring the atmosphere. They don't have much contact with the general public. And what we need to be able to utilize that trust that's there in the medical profession. So I said, instead of figuring out how you're going to solve the problem of health when the climate gets hotter, what are you going to do to stop and prevent? And there was a look of bewilderment. That's not our job. It's everybody's job to stop the climate change. And you, the public health workers, the medical profession, has a tremendous potential. But we've kind of been educated into the compartment. So when I say life-centered, let's look for all of us. What is the reality out there? And instead of saying I'm in this division, this hole, or that cupboard, or that silo, or something like that, what is my contribution I can make? And that's what we were asking the educators 6 months ago. Doesn't matter whether you're in the arts. If you're in the arts, what are you doing? What can you do? Or in cinema, what can you be doing to create awareness in the world about the challenges, not only of climate change, but certainly that's the number one threat before us today. Whether you're doing an MBA in management or in economics or in literature, there's no discipline that cannot be contributing to the reality of the world we live in. And so I think we need to make life the center rather than the discipline, make the person the center rather than the subject. It goes a ways toward, toward focusing us on helping to raise the next generation, which is a lot more in touch with reality than we have been up until now.
And Gary, I think that you touched some very crucial point because I asked you about what could inspire the next generation. Think if we could have one common shared value, that is our planet, the future of our planet. This could help automatically even to overcome the silos approach because we were all together, we would be all together towards a common goal that is way bigger than what we are doing now, way bigger value than what we are after now. So thank you very much for your comments. Now, Alex, as a leader in the conservation innovation, which kind of skills can really make the difference?
Yeah, I think we've talked about some of those, but I do want to actually just respond to something you said. It's just I am here courtesy of ASU, but I'm also here courtesy of the Climate in Medicine, Climate and Health Foundation. So today is the first time that COP has ever had a ministerial on health. that is happening on this day, right? This foundation, I am here with hundreds of physicians, medical school professors, and nurses, all kinds of healthcare professionals that are involved in this. Professor Maybach at George Mason University, an amazing expert in climate communications, has now provided a coalition of 63 medical associations who are now making climate change part of it. So I do think maybe some of the institutions like World Health, who are well behind our ability to deal with COVID, uh, that might be an issue with them rather than the field is moving forward and they recognize that, Washington, D.C., you cannot, this summer, we could not breathe because of the fires and the particulate matter in the air from Canada. And that is a health concern that has huge impacts in terms of what we're doing. I think we've heard a lot of the ideas and a lot of those skills, systems thinking, multidisciplinarity, innovation and disruption as part of sustainability, technology for MRV, monitoring, reporting, and verification, harnessing collective genius and power networks, behavior change and dealing with change fundamentally, I think are two sides of that. And those are things that we are thinking about and applying them to what we're trying to do. But I think we've had that, like, these are it. These are good ones.
And it's interesting because these are common, even if you are focused on the conservatism, you on clean technology, but these are common skills that are very much, I think, that we could apply to each and every
Yeah.
part of the.
Yeah, my view is sustainability cuts into everything we're
Yes,
doing. And
clean everything.
Peter and I had an interesting thought experiment at ASU a couple of years ago on what if you built an entire university that every part of the university touched climate change, and it was a comment, and touched conservation, right? And if you think about it, how does law deal with it? How does medicine deal with it? How does business think about that within what they're trying to do? How does storytelling, how do liberal arts deal with it? And I think there's a lot of truth to it. And one of the things ASU has done is really put innovation, sustainability, entrepreneurship, all these principles in every part of the campus. And it's actually extraordinary to be able to see that.
Great, thank you. Mike, for you. I think that never, it's now more than ever before, it's particularly important to continue to innovate and learning in order even to prevent, as we were saying, not only to fix, but to prevent. How are you fostering this culture of learning and innovation?
That's a great question. Um, One of the things that makes our organization unique is that we have a really world-class campus in downtown Los Angeles. It's 3.2 acres. It's 30,000 square feet of co-working space, co-located with 30,000 square feet of world-class laboratories, including an advanced prototyping center that has every piece of equipment that you could possibly want. We have laser cutters and 3D printers and CNC milling machines, and I mean, really sophisticated machinery. And so not only can our innovators uh, work together, in the co-working space to conceptualize new products and technology and service, but they have access just a few feet from their office to some really incredible labs where they can build, prototypes for some of their widgets. And in addition to having access to the labs, we have a full staff of people who can work with the innovators on their products. A lot of the times the innovators are trained on how to use some of this equipment, but in certain cases they need access to some of our staff. And so once they are able to develop a prototype, we have created a whole suite of services that are designed to help them get their first pilot in the ground. So Lacey has several innovative products or um, programs that have been designed to help companies do their first pilot. A lot of times those pilots are done right there on our campus. The technology is integrated into the operations of the campus. We have electric vehicle charging equipment. We have leak detection hardware and software. We have solar systems. We have battery storage systems, all integrated into our campus. And then we also have programs that are designed to help our companies get their first pilot deployment off campus, and sometimes in with some very large organizations like some of the biggest utilities in Southern California. And so I would say that, you know, having those kinds of access to those kinds of programs and services is really just unbelievably valuable for some of these startups. And, some of the equipment that they have access to, they're either software licenses in the design lab that cost 25 or $30,000 a piece, and they would never be able to afford those kinds of software. Some of the laser cutters and the water cutter, those machines cost $300,000 to $400,000 a piece, and they get access to it as being part of our program. So I think just giving the entrepreneurs and the innovators access to all of that is just incredibly valuable.
You even co-innovate and co-develop with them? Or
Yeah, I mean, we do have staff who help co-innovate, I guess you would say. Lacey does take an equity position in our companies, usually between 1.5% and 3%, and so and that's in the form of warrants. And so it's in our best interest to help
yes,
those
exactly.
companies succeed. And so I think co-innovating is
It's
a good way of
important. Yeah,
characterizing it. Yeah.
great. Thank you. Danielle, seems that you are, so for sure you are very young, but at the same time you already have a lot of experience. So my question is, if you can share with us an inspiring or challenging experience from your education where you have had to practice the self-regulations, cooperation, or innovation, and even how do you feel these experiences are shaping your vision of the future?
In my experience, working both at the Institute for Climate and Peace as well as getting my undergraduate degree at ASU, um, through both of those, I encountered a lot of challenges, calling for self-regulation and cooperation just because of navigating diverse perspectives in virtual spaces as I attended ASU online. And I also worked for ICP remotely from
Mhm.
Hawaii on a different island. So it comes with a lot of challenges in and of itself.
Mm.
Um, but within navigating the diverse perspectives, as well as in the real world and in virtual spaces, it demands adaptability and empathy and skills that I am still developing today over time. And through the structure of my education at ASU, majoring in interdisciplinary studies, that experience influenced by the ASU online platform as well has taught me that innovation often arises from
Mm.
collective efforts, no matter where you are in the world. And even in the virtual realm, it underscores the adaptability fostered within the academic community as well as globally.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Gary, we've been talking about the importance of the intersection of art, science, and even climate actions. Which are the exciting possibilities and even challenges that you foresee in this intersection?
The the idea that art and science are somehow dealing with different realities or different worlds, I think is part of the problem that we need to overcome. That science focuses on the objective, measurable, quantifiable dimensions of reality, and we try to look at for algorithms that will capture them. The arts try to reflect the subjective nature of reality, which is what motivates human beings to act. Now we're in a situation in the world where we've got all the objective data of science to tell us that we're on a collision course with the future. And yet we know collectively
Mm.
that we're still not doing what we need to do, that the emotional commitment of humanity, of our leadership in all areas, we have outstanding examples of individuals and organizations that are pioneering in new ways. But this is a global issue, and it can't be done just by political figures who have to ultimately be elected by the public. It can't be done just by business leaders who are accountable to their shareholders. It's got to be by collectively of humanity. And, I think the sustainability, what was said about sustainability is absolutely right and true. But we have to ask a question. Is that what's going to motivate humanity to take the fundamental changes they have to make? We had the Rajendra Pachuri, who was the chairman of the IPCC. He was on our board. He was for 13 years. He was the chairman of IPC, and he made wonderful analysis, as the IPC has done, to the world of the facts. The question is, who is it reaching? And how much is it motivating global society to change in all fields, even in education, which is what we've been discussing? And that's why the focus we have been taking is put the human individual at what does this mean to people? Okay, CO2 levels are going up, and migration will be there, and jobs will be lost, or something will be happening. But people respond to their needs. And when we look at climate in terms of its impact on people, in terms of food security, in terms of health, which we've been discussing, in terms of the stability of jobs in the economy and the political system, which is now being divided by polar forces and everything, climate becomes not just for the sustainability of the planet, it becomes for each individual. And so when I talked about life-centered, what I really meant is person-centered. The message should touch each person as what it means to them. And it's great to hear that the physicians, they're doing a wonderful work in the world, even as always. But reaching out and touching the society, that's what we haven't done as effectively as we can, in spite of wonderful efforts all along. So I think when we talk about arts, what we're really talking about is how important is our knowledge and our skill and our capacity to communicate with others, not just in terms of marketing, but in terms of understanding and reaching them to the point where they will understand and act. And the arts represent, whether it's literature or cinema, or any of the arts, it has been the, the field in which human beings have shown their capacity to communicate their humanity and move other people to action by that. And just to take a superficial example, which many of you may know, a few years ago, UNDP developed this video on dinosaur talking about extinction, a 90-second video, and it was put on the UN website alongside a speech by the Secretary General. And after a few months, the Secretary General had 30,000 viewers, and the dinosaur had 1.5 million. And that message, so
says a lot.
So the arts are as much a part of us. They address our inside, and that's what we need to do better if we're going to mobilize the magnitude and speed of change we need. We have to have a message that reaches everybody. And our artists of all description, I don't mean just fine artists, or are in the widest sense, those who understand how to communicate to other people the most important things in the world, in our lives. That's what we need to change.
And
course.
I love very much your answer, because it brings us to a different perspective. Because you are saying, yes, important the communication, yes, important the collaboration, but let's use a different language. Let's use a language that really can reach out everyone, and art could be the vehicle. Because we keep think of more of the uh, I won't say the technology, but yes, as a technology, as the vehicle to communicate. Rather, you are bringing us back to the value of the art as the way to communicate with the humans, because at the end it's all about humans, what we are talking about. I love it. And you even shared an interesting example. Now, Alex, could you even share a story or a project that you at Conservation X Labs are doing that really demonstrate these new skills of the future and the impact on our future?
Yeah, maybe two ways that we did things, but I love having you before me because you say so many things that are like that I think are deeply interesting. We just had Taylor Swift give a concert in Rio de Janeiro
Mm,
where one of the fans died because of heat exhaustion because of excessive heat temperatures. That was an amazing opportunity for her to say something on climate change, and she did not. And it was a missed opportunity for someone who has deep if she can get people who don't follow football to buy football jerseys because of someone she's dating, that's a missed opportunity for us to get really to matter. But the other idea is fundamentally thinking about like, part of the thing we do is we continue to give people a choice. Why not
mm,
make sure that every choice is sustainable? Why
yeah.
not make sure every
Mm,
product that is on the
mhm,
marketplace? And I think I'll give two examples that's tied to that.
mhm,
So when we pulled out, the United States pulled out, I should say, United States as we pulled out of
mm,
Paris,
mm,
we at Conservation X Labs started thinking about how could we actually do something that would
mm,
contribute
mm,
to making it irrelevant that a political decision was made. We're not a policy organization. We don't. We're not deeply engaged in policy. We build products and then work to get them to
mm,
scale. And we've supported 141
mm,
products from 70 countries on 6 continents. Funded them with $12 million and have helped them raise $300 million and $315 million in counting to bring these solutions to scale. All of them that are
mm,
addressing these underlying drivers of
mm,
extinction and climate
mm,
change in terms of what we're doing. We think creating these new economies is how we do it. On Paris, we looked at Project Drawdown and the list at the time, and we said, what is the number one thing on that list? And that was based on emissions, it was cooling technology, right? So refrigeration, end of life considerations, air conditioning. And we said,
mhm,
let's take one bit of that room AC, right? Number one thing on Project Drawdown, how do we actually transform air conditioning with the Rocky Mountain Institute
mm,
and the
yeah.
government of India, which is the world's biggest market for air conditioning, and there's hundreds of millions of people moving in the middle class, the first thing they buy is a refrigerator and an AC, right? And market, right, they subsidize electricity to the tune of $18 billion a year, and they are expecting to have to double their grid infrastructure to deal with the amount of AC that's actually coming online. So they have a significant cost. And so we ran a global competition. We ran an ideation stage and then a prototyping stage where people developed ideas of new technologies beyond vapor compression to develop air conditioning. And our goal was to get a 5x increase in efficiency. We actually
Mm,
we had a building set up that were testing facilities where these prototypes were then built. We went through the first stage, awarded the ideas, took, took something like 5 of them, and then ran them for 3 months in a sensorized rooms to actually measure their efficiency. And we got two finalists that were 10x as efficient.
wow.
What that means is if we could scale up that technology, it is taking off 50% of the world's cars, or the equivalent of taking Australia and Finland off the map. Why will it scale? Because if it's more efficient and price was a cost of design consideration, it is cheaper for the consumer, it is cheaper for the government, and it is a way that we can actually get at it. And one of them was developed by a larger company, Dehgan, that is now scaling that worldwide. The other one's a startup that is also trying to scale. And that is a way that we try to harness collective
Collective.
genius to be able to do it. Do I have time for one other example? No.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I
then
don't
I'll
think
stop
so.
with that one and
But
talk.
that was
I think
great.
that's where
Re-
networks and harnessing collective genius and innovation and technology can help us actually
mm.
transform the reality of what is possible.
Talking about genius and in general the network. Last question for you, Mike. I think that one of the topics that we haven't discussed enough today is about the talents, because we know that talent is another key point, and we never have enough talent, or there is always a war for the talent. What are you doing, or what is the main challenge to attract talent to the clean technology?
Can I just make a point
You
real quick
have to.
about what something Gary said? We're in Los Angeles, and arguably probably home to more creative people than
Oh,
just
yes.
about anywhere in the world. At least when it comes to entertainment. And For years, we have been trying to get the entertainment community to be more engaged in telling the climate story. And recently, Scott Burns, who was the writer producer who won an Oscar for Inconvenient Truth, he produced a television show, I believe, for Apple, called Extrapolation, and he brought in all this incredible talent like Ed Norton and uh, what's her name, the greatest actress of all time. I can't
Depend from
remember it.
your.
Yeah, so all these incredibly talented people, Meryl Streep,
Ah,
and he put on I think an 8 episode arc of telling how the world is essentially going to have to adapt to climate change over the next I think 50 to 100
interesting.
years. And I thought it was an incredible show, but he was roundly criticized by a lot of the climate community
Wow.
for his depiction of adaptation. And he worked with some of the leading scientists in the countries. And it just really bugged me that here's this guy trying to use his talents, his Oscar-winning talents, to tell what I thought was a series of very realistic stories about what the world is going to experience. And he was criticized by a lot of folks for doing so. So I think it's difficult for the creative community to step up when they try and put something together and they're just going to be criticized. But I digress. uh, One of the benefits of working at Lacey is that we have just no problem attracting
Okay,
talent.
that's interesting.
I mean, there are,
And why?
well, I think, we have a track record now over the last 12 years that we've been
That's
in
interesting.
existence of really being able to support innovators. We just crossed the $1 billion barrier in terms of the funding that we've attracted for our companies. We've helped over 400 companies since we opened our doors. We've created over 3,000 jobs. I think the city of LA estimates that Lacey has generated over close to $1 billion in economic activity for. So anyway, it's really
It's
been
a
an
huge
incredibly,
track
yeah,
record.
the track record speaks for ourselves. And our companies, whenever we open up recruitment for our cohorts, we always have just way more companies than we can actually let into the program. It's highly competitive now to get into all of our incubation support programs. And then whenever there are positions available at Lacey, we always just have an amazing amount of people who apply for each of those roles. And so it's sort of an embarrassment of riches when it comes to talent. So I don't know if I can speak for all the innovation community, but there is just so much interest right now in climate, climate space and sustainability, particularly in California. That I know, when I see people like Danielle here and a lot of the other young people I've met here, there really is just a
Yes,
tremendous amount of interest in this space. And
genuine,
yeah,
genuine, authentic interest.
exactly. And so I'm very optimistic that a lot of the talent that we need is going into or
Into this kind of, yeah.
various fields, whether it's in finance or whether it's in engineering. It doesn't matter. There are a lot of really smart, talented people going into this space. And I have two teenagers. I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, and they have both already stated that they want to go into the climate space. And it's not because of their dad. They don't think anything their dad does is really that cool. But just on their own from the environmental science classes that they've taken in high school, they've already told me that they want to go into the climate space when they get out of
Great.
college or study. They want to study a related field in college. So I'm just really heartened by the level of interest from young people in this space, particularly in the innovation side of the equation. So
Thank you very much, Mike. And I think that this is the best way for us to close this session with optimism. And I truly believe that after our conversation, I can tell you I am even more optimist because I believe that we have all the right ingredients to change our future. We just need to communicate more, collaborate more, and have a joint common bigger value that is our future. And with that, I want to thank you for being here today and this audience as well. It was a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much and talk to you soon. Thank you.